The planet Virelia hung in the vast expanse of the galaxy like a jewel. Its cities floated among clouds that glimmered with soft, multicolored light, and its forests stretched far and wide, with trees that shimmered in every hue imaginable. Birds with crystal-like feathers flew between the branches, and rivers of liquid silver glided through the valleys below. To outsiders it was a world of wonder, but for the beings who lived there it was also a place of strict order, ruled by the alien queen. The queen herself was legendary, not just for her beauty, which was otherworldly, or for her intelligence, which surpassed even the brightest minds across several galaxies, but for her wisdom and the fairness she demanded in all matters. She ruled Virelia not with fear, but with respect and careful judgment. And now she had issued a challenge unlike any seen before. A great announcement echoed across Virelia and throughout neighboring systems. The queen would select her mate through a series of trials. Any being from any planet, any species who wished to earn her hand could participate. But the trials would not just test strength or speed, they would test intelligence, character, and the very essence of one's heart. The news spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, ambitious princes, daring warriors, and cunning strategists began their journeys to Virelia. Every star system seemed to send its best to compete, confident that their skills or technology would carry them through. Among the candidates were beings whose reputations alone made others tremble, known for victories in battles, diplomacy, or feats of genius. And then there was Ethan, a human from Earth. He was not known as a warrior or a genius. He was an explorer, someone curious about the stars, planets, and cultures he had yet to understand. For humans, space travel was still a recent achievement compared to alien civilizations, and many considered humans weak and unprepared for galactic competition. When Ethan learned of the challenge, some friends warned him not to bother. "You don't belong there," they said. "It's impossible." But Ethan had always been drawn to challenges. He liked to see how far he could go, not with weapons or power, but with thought, courage, and adaptability. The journey to Virelia was long and treacherous. Ethan traveled in a small ship, maneuvering through asteroid fields and cosmic storms that had discouraged even seasoned alien pilots. Yet he arrived intact, his curiosity still burning brightly. He stepped onto the shimmering surface of Virelia and looked up at the floating city where the queen resided. Towers of crystal and light stretched into the clouds, reflecting the sun in dazzling colors. The sight took his breath away, but there was no time for marveling. He had a challenge to face. The candidates gathered in the great plaza beneath the Queen's palace. Aliens of every shape, size, and color filled the area. Some had 4 arms, others had wings. Some glowed with inner light, and others seemed capable of bending reality itself. All were confident. Ethan, a single human among them, looked small and ordinary. Many whispered and laughed, pointing at him. "Does he even belong here?" one said. "He's barely taller than a child," another snickered. But Ethan didn't answer. He knew the challenge was not about size or appearances. The queen descended from her throne with grace that made the crowd fall silent. Her presence alone seemed to light the plaza, and her eyes, deep and sparkling, scanned the candidates carefully. She spoke in a voice both commanding and gentle. "Welcome, travelers. Among you there are beings of strength, intelligence, and skill. But today you will be tested not for your glory nor for your fame. You will be tested for your heart, your mind, and your courage. Only the one who demonstrates all 3 shall earn my hand." The crowd murmured in excitement. The queen continued, "The trials will not be simple. Some will challenge your intellect, others your agility, and others still will reveal your character. Fail in any trial, and you may continue only if you have learned the lesson it intended to teach. Remember, arrogance and selfishness will defeat you before any obstacle can." Ethan listened intently. Unlike many others, he didn't see these words as a warning. He saw them as a clue. Where others relied on raw strength or technology, he realized that observation and careful thought would be key. The first trial was announced, the Labyrinth of Reflection. Candidates would enter a massive maze that shifted according to their thoughts and emotions. The walls were made of a translucent material that reflected fears, memories, and desires. Many competitors charged in confidently, using scanners or powerful weapons to blast obstacles. Almost immediately, they became trapped in illusions of failure or fear. Ethan paused at the entrance. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Instead of rushing in, he walked slowly, observing the walls and noticing patterns in the reflections. When he saw frightening visions, he reminded himself that they were not real. When he felt doubt, he focused on the task, not the feelings it stirred. His calm mind allowed him to navigate the maze steadily. Every twist and turn tested his patience, yet he progressed where others faltered. Outside the maze, the queen observed quietly. Many competitors struggled, frustrated, or outright failed. Yet Ethan's human nature, his ability to adapt, remain curious, and think differently stood out. It was subtle, but she noticed the difference immediately. Unlike the others, he seemed unaffected by pride or fear. After hours, Ethan emerged from the labyrinth, not just surviving, but understanding it. The queen nodded approvingly. "You move with clarity," she whispered to herself, almost unheard. The next trial tested intellect. Candidates were presented with a complex puzzle, a series of ancient alien scripts and symbols that told a story. They needed to uncover the hidden message and predict its outcome. Others tried brute force, using advanced translation devices or guessing randomly. Ethan, however, studied each symbol carefully, noticing patterns that even advanced technology overlooked. Slowly, methodically, he pieced together the story and found the hidden meaning. Once again, the queen's attention lingered on him. She saw the human's patience and focus, qualities rare even among the galaxy's elite. Some candidates began to whisper, "How is he doing this?" Others frowned, realizing that his simple, steady approach was more effective than all their clever gadgets. The day ended with a test of diplomacy. Two alien tribes, longtime rivals, were brought before the candidates. The task was to negotiate peace between them. Most suitors imposed solutions with authority or threats, thinking strength or intelligence would suffice. Ethan listened to both sides, asking questions, understanding fears, and finding common ground. Slowly, he guided the tribes to compromise, building trust rather than imposing it. By the end, the aliens themselves thanked him for understanding their true needs. When Ethan stepped back, exhausted but satisfied, the queen's gaze followed him with something unusual: admiration. She had expected charm, power, or intellect, but what she saw in this human was deeper. He combined courage, intelligence, patience, and empathy in a way that no other being had. She made a note to observe him closely. As the sun set over Virelia, bathing the floating cities in colors like liquid gold, the competitors returned to their quarters. Many grumbled in frustration, others questioned their abilities, but Ethan quietly reviewed the day's events. He did not see himself as a hero. He saw himself as someone who understood the value of careful thought, observation, and respect. Yet even as he rested, he could not ignore the feeling of being watched, not by guards or cameras, but by the queen herself. Somewhere in the floating palace above, her eyes followed him, curious and intrigued. Ethan had no idea what lay ahead, but he felt a strange certainty. This challenge would test everything he knew, and perhaps everything he was. The day had ended, but the trials were only beginning. Somewhere beyond the clouds, the queen prepared for the next stage, intrigued by the human who had survived where others had failed. And somewhere below, Ethan looked up at the stars, ready to face whatever came next, unaware that his journey was already changing the course of an entire galaxy. The morning sun painted the floating city of Virelia with shades of rose and gold. The air shimmered with energy, and the silver rivers below reflected the sky like mirrors. Ethan woke early, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Today would bring the second phase of the trials, and he knew that the queen would push each candidate further than before. The candidates assembled in the grand hall of the palace. Unlike the plaza, this hall was enclosed by walls of living crystal, glowing softly and shifting in color with the emotions of those inside. It was a place of focus where every thought and movement was magnified. The alien queen appeared, floating effortlessly above the ground, her presence commanding silence. "Today," she said, "you will face trials that will test not your strength or your knowledge alone, but your ability to adapt, your creativity, and your understanding of others. Many will fail because they cannot see beyond themselves. Watch carefully and remember, the path to true success is never the easiest or the most obvious." Ethan listened, taking the words to heart. He had learned from the first day that rushing or relying on superficial skills would lead nowhere. Patience, observation, and empathy had carried him through the labyrinth and the diplomatic challenge. He hoped those same qualities would guide him today. The first challenge of the day was called the shifting arena. The floor beneath each competitor changed unpredictably, creating obstacles that tested balance, timing, and strategy. Walls would rise and fall, platforms would tilt, and gaps would appear without warning. Some competitors immediately activated their technology, flying or leaping with mechanical aids. Others tried brute strength, pushing or smashing obstacles in their path. Ethan did none of these. He took a deep breath and watched the arena carefully. He noticed patterns in the movement of the platforms and the timing of the shifting walls. Instead of reacting in panic, he moved with awareness, stepping lightly and adjusting to each change. When a competitor lost balance or fell, he did not hurry past. He waited for the path to stabilize, then continued. His calm, careful approach allowed him to navigate where others failed. The Queen observed with keen interest. While many candidates relied on external tools or aggression, Ethan relied on observation and thought. She could see that his success was not a matter of luck, but of understanding the environment and himself. After completing the arena, Ethan barely had time to catch his breath before the next challenge was announced, the Trial of Insight. In this task, candidates were presented with a series of holographic simulations showing conflicts, moral dilemmas, and historical events from across the galaxy. Each situation required a solution that balanced fairness, creativity, and effectiveness. Those who relied solely on logic or power often failed, producing solutions that satisfied one side but harmed another. Ethan approached the simulations with quiet focus. He did not rush to choose the first solution that seemed clever. Instead, he analyzed each scenario, considering perspectives and consequences. When one simulation presented a group of planets on the brink of war over scarce resources, he proposed a compromise that allowed shared use, combined with trade agreements, and a cooperative council to prevent future conflict. The result amazed even the Queen. The other candidates watched in disbelief as Ethan's solutions consistently succeeded where advanced alien minds had stumbled. Some tried to mimic his approach, but their understanding lacked the subtle human touch, an ability to combine logic with empathy and imagination. A murmur ran through the hall. The once dismissive whispers about the human had turned into astonishment. "How does he do it?" a competitor muttered. Another shook their head, unable to understand why a human, a species considered fragile and inexperienced in galactic affairs, could succeed where they had failed. The Queen, however, remained calm. Her curiosity grew. She was fascinated not only by Ethan's skill but by his character. He did not boast or seek attention. He did not show arrogance when others failed. Instead, he observed, learned, and applied himself with quiet determination. The final challenge of the day was the test of cooperation. Candidates were paired with alien partners, many of whom had never worked with humans before. The task was simple in description but complex in execution. Navigate a floating maze together while avoiding traps and hazards. Success required trust, communication, and coordination. Most candidates struggled immediately. Their partners, unfamiliar with human behavior, were impatient or uncooperative. Some competitors tried to force the situation with dominance, shouting instructions or taking control entirely. These attempts failed, and many teams fell behind. Ethan, however, approached his partner with patience and openness. His partner was a lithe alien named Varys, known for speed and agility but also for a stubborn streak. Instead of trying to control Varys, Ethan observed how Varys moved and listened to his ideas. He offered suggestions rather than commands, and together they formed a rhythm, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. The maze was treacherous. Platforms shifted without warning, walls moved to trap the unwary, and the floor sometimes disappeared into misty voids. Yet Ethan and Varys advanced steadily. Where other pairs faltered, they trusted each other and adapted. By the end of the trial, they emerged not just successful but closer as allies. The Queen's eyes lingered on Ethan as he stepped forward, a small smile touching her lips. He had not only succeeded but had done so in a way that honored the spirit of the challenge. She noted his humility, his creativity, and the respect he showed to his fellow competitors. It was rare for any being, especially a human, to demonstrate such combination of traits in her presence. After the trials, the competitors gathered in the palace courtyard. Many were frustrated or confused by Ethan's success. Some could not accept that a human had outperformed beings far more advanced, far stronger or far more experienced. Others watched silently, realizing that the human's approach, quiet observation, patience, empathy, and clever thinking, had revealed flaws in their own assumptions. Ethan, meanwhile, remained unaware of the full impact of his achievements. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary. He had simply done what felt right, solved problems in ways that made sense to him, and treated others with respect. He knew the trials were far from over, but he felt confident that this approach would continue to serve him well. The alien queen did not speak much that evening, but she continued to observe Ethan from her floating chamber above the palace. She reflected on what she had seen. So far, every other candidate had relied on predictable strengths: speed, intelligence, technology, or intimidation. Ethan had relied on something different, his mind and his heart working together. It was unusual, even revolutionary, and it intrigued her deeply. As night fell over Virelia, the floating cities glowed softly, and the rivers mirrored the stars above. Ethan looked out at the horizon, feeling the weight of the trials ahead. The Queen's challenge was far from over, and he knew that each stage would test him in new ways. But he also felt a quiet sense of determination. He had survived today not because he was the strongest, but because he had understood himself, the world, and others. Somewhere above, in the chambers of crystal, the Queen made her own preparations. Tomorrow would bring the most unusual trials yet, designed to reveal the heart in ways no one could anticipate. She wondered how Ethan would respond, and whether he would continue to impress her in ways that others could not even imagine. For now, both the human and the Queen rested under the same stars, their thoughts unknowingly linked by the unfolding events. Ethan was unaware of the attention he had drawn, but the Queen was already considering possibilities that would change not just the trials, but perhaps the very course of Virelia itself. The day had ended, but the story was far from over. Tomorrow would test courage, ingenuity, and character in ways no one had yet imagined. Ethan, the human, had survived challenges that seemed impossible. And as the galaxy watched silently, many began to wonder, could this ordinary human truly be extraordinary? The sun rose slowly over Virelia, its light spilling across the floating cities and sparkling forests. Today was the third day of the trials, and a sense of anticipation hung heavy in the air. The candidates assembled in the central plaza, but this time, the atmosphere was tense. Whispers filled the crowd as all eyes turned to Ethan, the human who had already impressed the Queen beyond measure. Competitors who had once mocked him now regarded him with cautious curiosity, and in some cases envy. The alien Queen appeared, floating above the plaza, her presence commanding attention without effort. Her eyes, deep and brilliant, scanned the candidates, finally resting on Ethan. There was a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and something harder to define. The crowd fell silent as she began to speak. "Today," she said, "you will face trials designed to reveal your courage, your selflessness, and the strength of your character. These challenges are not merely tests of skill. They are tests of heart. Many of you will fail because you seek victory over understanding. The one who passes will not only demonstrate ability but wisdom, compassion, and bravery." The candidates exchanged uneasy glances. The Queen's words carried a weight that could not be ignored. Today would not be easy. The first trial was called the Arena of Elements. It was unlike anything the candidates had faced before. A massive platform hovered above a churning, multicolored storm that twisted and roared below. The candidates were instructed to retrieve a crystal from the center of the arena, but the elements themselves fought against them. Fire bursts, wind gusts, shifting platforms, and sudden walls of water created unpredictable obstacles. Many competitors relied on their speed or advanced technology, but the storm was chaotic, reacting unpredictably to each attempt. Ethan studied the arena before stepping forward. Unlike others, he did not rush. He watched the movements, noticing patterns in the bursts of fire and the swings of wind. He moved with patience, adjusting his steps carefully and timing his movements precisely. When a competitor fell or was knocked back, he did not take advantage by rushing past. He waited for openings, calculated his path, and continued steadily. The Queen observed silently, her eyes fixed on him. His calm and adaptability set him apart from the rest. While others relied on power or gadgets, Ethan relied on observation, timing, and courage. Slowly but surely, He made his way to the center, reaching the crystal without serious injury. The plaza erupted in whispers and gasps. No one had expected a human to navigate the storm so effectively. The second trial was the test of the mind. The candidates were presented with a holographic simulation of a planet on the brink of collapse. Environmental disasters, political tension, and cultural misunderstandings threatened to destroy the civilization. Each candidate had to devise a plan to save the planet, balancing resources, people's needs, and long-term consequences. Most competitors relied on technological solutions, attempting to manipulate the environment or deploy automated systems. Many plans failed because they overlooked the people affected or ignored the delicate balance of the ecosystem. Ethan, however, approached the task differently. He listened carefully to the simulated inhabitants, understanding their needs, fears, and strengths. Instead of trying to control everything, he created a solution that relied on cooperation, education, and strategic use of resources. He coordinated the simulation's people to work together, combining their skills and knowledge. Slowly, the planet stabilized. The Queen, watching from her elevated platform, nodded subtly. She had not expected a human to succeed in this trial, and yet Ethan had done so through observation, understanding, and careful reasoning. Others stared in disbelief. How could someone so ordinary, so unassuming, produce results beyond even the most powerful competitors? Finally, the third trial began, the trial of selflessness. This trial was unique and personal. Each candidate had to retrieve a rare artifact from the heart of a shifting storm on the outskirts of the floating city. The artifact itself was not dangerous, but the storm reacted unpredictably to each competitor. Those who acted selfishly or rushed blindly were trapped or expelled. Ethan noticed another competitor, a strong alien warrior named Kyle, struggling to reach the artifact. Kyle was trapped between shifting walls of energy, unable to move. Most candidates ignored him, focused solely on their own success. Ethan, however, hesitated for a moment, considering the choice. Risking the storm was dangerous, but leaving Kale behind seemed wrong. With careful steps, Ethan approached the warrior. Using insight from his previous trials, he predicted the storm's movements and guided Kyle to safety. Together, they retrieved the artifact. When Ethan handed it to the Queen, he had done so not just for himself, but for another. His courage and selflessness were undeniable. The crowd gasped at what they had witnessed. While many had expected fierce competition and rivalry, they had seen cooperation and bravery instead. The Queen's expression softened, her eyes focused entirely on Ethan. Here was a being who had faced danger, outsmarted obstacles, and still thought of others first. After the trials, the competitors returned to the palace. Many were frustrated, unable to understand how a human had succeeded where they had failed. Some whispered that luck must have played a part, yet the results were clear. Ethan had excelled in every trial not because of power, gadgets, or intimidation, but because of his mind, heart, and courage. The Queen convened a private council. She spoke of her observations, acknowledging the remarkable nature of Ethan's performance. "He is unlike any other," she said quietly. "He sees clearly, acts bravely, and cares beyond himself. These qualities are rare in the galaxy, and perhaps even more rare in humans." Even among her advisors, many were surprised. They had expected alien competitors, masters of technology or combat, to dominate the trials. Ethan had surpassed them all with qualities they had dismissed as minor: patience, understanding, empathy, and courage. That evening, Ethan wandered the palace gardens, reflecting on the day's events. The floating flowers shimmered in the soft light, and small, glowing creatures flitted through the air. He thought about the challenges he had faced, the lessons he had learned, and the unexpected ally he had made in Kale. He did not feel pride or arrogance. He felt focus and readiness. Tomorrow's final trial would be the most difficult yet, and he needed every ounce of skill, courage, and understanding he possessed. Meanwhile, the Queen observed him from a balcony above. She had seen many candidates in her lifetime, but Ethan was different. His strength was not obvious. His power was not flashy. It lay in subtlety and thought and heart. He moved in ways that were unexpected and yet completely effective. She wondered what lay beneath that human exterior, and whether he could continue to impress her in the coming trial. As the night deepened, the palace lights glowed softly and the floating city seemed to hum with quiet energy. Candidates rested, competitors whispered, and the Queen remained thoughtful. Ethan had survived the trials of courage, intelligence, and selflessness. The path ahead, however, would test him like never before. Somewhere in the palace chambers, she considered the final stage. It was designed not merely to challenge strength or skill, but to reveal the truest nature of the candidates' hearts. She knew the outcome of this trial could surprise everyone. Even she was not certain how a human would respond when faced with the ultimate test. But for now, Ethan did not know that the Queen's attention was fully on him. He slept under the stars, dreaming of challenges and possibilities, unaware that his journey was about to reach a moment that would decide not just the trials, but the fate of his relationship with the most powerful being in the galaxy. The galaxy waited silently, the floating cities glowing like beacons of light. Tomorrow, the final trial would begin, and Ethan, the human who had defied expectations, would face a test that could change everything. The morning mist hung low over Veralia, swirling through the floating gardens and silver rivers. Today was the final day of the Queen's challenge, the moment that would determine the victor. The air was thick with anticipation. Competitors, exhausted from previous trials, gathered in the central plaza. Most looked nervous, while others tried to mask their anxiety with confident smiles. Yet among them all, one figure stood calm. Ethan, the human who had defied expectations from the very first trial. The alien queen descended from her throne, her presence commanding silence. Her eyes, bright and discerning, swept over the candidates. Today's trial was unlike the previous ones. It was designed not only to test skill or intelligence, but courage, judgment, and the essence of a being's heart. This trial, the Queen announced, is the trial of truth. Each candidate will be faced with a choice that reveals their true character. Your actions will not be judged by success alone, but by honesty, courage, and integrity. Those who act selfishly or deceitfully will fail, no matter how skilled they are. The competitors exchanged uneasy glances. The trial was shrouded in mystery. Many feared the unknown, relying on assumptions and strategies from the previous days. But Ethan felt a quiet confidence. He knew that he could not rely on strength or technology alone. His understanding, patience, and compassion would guide him. The trial began. A portal opened in the plaza, revealing a massive landscape stretching beyond sight. It was a shifting world of storms, floating platforms, and hidden pathways. In the center lay a glowing crystal, more radiant than anything Ethan had seen. This was the artifact each candidate was meant to retrieve, but as they stepped forward, the landscape shifted unpredictably, reacting not only to movement but to thought and intent. Many competitors rushed forward, attempting to seize the crystal with force or speed. They were met with obstacles that seemed impossible to predict. Some fell into voids, others were trapped by shifting walls of energy, and still others became lost in illusions of fear and doubt. Ethan moved carefully, observing the world around him. He noticed patterns in the shifting platforms, subtle cues in the energy of the storm. Yet as he approached the crystal, he saw something unexpected. Another competitor, a small, desperate alien named Lyra, trapped under a falling pillar. The other candidates ignored her, focused solely on their own success. Ethan paused. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. Integrity, courage, and honesty above all. He realized that retrieving the artifact without helping Lyra would be easy, but it would not be right. Risking himself, he ran to the trapped alien, lifting the pillar with careful effort. Lyra gasped in surprise and gratitude. Together they freed themselves and continued toward the crystal. As they advanced, the world around them reacted violently. Storms of light and energy tried to separate them, shifting platforms and walls of force blocking their path. But Ethan's calm thinking and clear judgment allowed them to navigate each obstacle. He guided Lyra, anticipating the movement of the storm, balancing caution with courage. Slowly, steadily, they moved forward. Finally, they reached the glowing crystal. Most candidates had already failed, exhausted by their own mistakes or trapped by their selfishness. Ethan looked at the crystal and then at Lyra. In that moment, he realized that victory was not about seizing the artifact alone. It was about how he achieved it. With a nod to Lyra, he stepped forward and touched the crystal. A radiant light engulfed them, signaling completion of the trial. The plaza fell silent. The Queen's eyes widened slightly, her attention fixed entirely on Ethan. She had anticipated brilliance, courage, and strategy. But she had not expected this combination. Skill coupled with selflessness, intelligence paired with empathy. Ethan had succeeded not just in action but in character. Slowly, the Queen descended closer to the plaza, her voice carrying over the crowd. "Ethan of Earth," she said, her tone both formal and warm, "you have completed all trials with courage, intelligence, and integrity. You have succeeded where others failed, not by force, not by technology, but by understanding, compassion, and wisdom." Whispers spread through the plaza. Competitors looked at each other in disbelief. How could a human, so small, so ordinary in appearance, triumph over beings far stronger, faster, or more experienced? The Queen continued, her gaze never leaving Ethan. "You have proven yourself worthy," she declared. "Not because you are the strongest or the cleverest, but because you are true." Ethan stepped forward, a mixture of surprise and humility on his face. He had expected recognition, perhaps even admiration, but he had not expected this moment. He felt the weight of the Queen's words, understanding that he had achieved something remarkable, not just in winning, but in the way he had done it. The Queen extended her hand. "As victor of the challenge, you may ask one thing of me," she said. "But know this, the choice you make will shape not only your life but the future of Virelia itself." Ethan looked at her, feeling a strange mix of awe and connection. He could see the wisdom and curiosity in her eyes, and for the first time he understood that this was more than a challenge of skill. It was a meeting of hearts. I wish to learn from you," he said finally, "to understand your world, your people, and to grow as someone worthy of your trust." The Queen's expression softened, and a faint smile appeared. She stepped closer, her presence both majestic and gentle. "Very well," she said. "You have already shown that you are worthy, not through conquest but through understanding. Your humility, courage, and empathy have surprised even me." The crowd erupted in astonished murmurs. No one had expected the Queen to respond with warmth and curiosity, rather than ceremony or formality. It was unprecedented. Competitors looked at Ethan with a new respect. Realizing that he had not merely won a challenge, he had redefined what it meant to be victorious. In the days that followed, Ethan and the Queen spent time together. She showed him the floating cities, the shimmering forests, and the rivers of silver that wound through the valleys. He asked questions, listened carefully, and offered insights of his own. Unlike other candidates, he did not seek to impress or dominate. He simply sought to understand, to connect, and to learn. The Queen observed him closely, intrigued by his perspective. Unlike the others, he challenged her gently, not through arrogance but through thoughtful questions and honest observations. She realized that this human, small, ordinary, and yet extraordinary, had something she had rarely seen, a mind and heart perfectly balanced. The court began to notice the bond forming between them. Advisors, courtiers, and even previous competitors could see the subtle shift in the Queen's demeanor. She smiled more often, asked questions she had not asked before, and considered perspectives she had never fully explored. Ethan had not just won a challenge, he had begun to influence the Queen herself. One evening, under the soft glow of Virelia's twin moons, the Queen turned to Ethan. "You have done something remarkable," she said quietly. "Not only have you succeeded in my trials, but you have surprised me. Your actions, your thoughts, your courage, they are unlike any I have seen. You have earned not just victory, but my respect and my curiosity." Ethan smiled, feeling both pride and humility. "Thank you," he said. "I only did what felt right. I never expected to impress anyone, let alone you." The Queen studied him, her gaze deep and thoughtful. "It is precisely that honesty and integrity that make you extraordinary. Many would seek glory or power, but you have acted with heart. That is rare in any world, human or alien." The following day, a ceremony was held in the palace plaza. The Queen stood before her people, her eyes shining as she spoke. "Today we witness a remarkable event. A human, small in size but vast in courage and understanding, has completed all trials. He has shown intelligence, bravery, and compassion beyond expectation. He has proven that worth is not measured by appearance, strength, or species, but by character and heart." Ethan stood beside her, feeling a mixture of awe and gratitude. He had not sought fame or recognition. He had only acted with integrity and thoughtfulness, yet now the entire galaxy seemed to acknowledge his achievement. The Queen turned to him, her expression soft and warm. Ethan, you have won the challenge. And in doing so, you have shown that what matters most is not power or skill, but understanding and courage. You have surprised me, and in doing so, you have inspired all of Veralia. The crowd erupted in applause, cheering not only for the victory, but for the extraordinary human who had defied expectations. Competitors who had once dismissed him now bowed respectfully, acknowledging his remarkable achievement. Ethan looked at the Queen, feeling a connection deeper than anything he had ever known. "Thank you," he said simply. "I hope to continue learning, to grow, and to contribute to your world in the best way I can." The Queen smiled, a rare and genuine smile that lit her face. "Then let us begin this journey together," she said. "You have proven yourself not just to me, but to all of Veralia. Your victory is not just in the challenge, it is in the heart you have shown. And for that you have my respect, my curiosity, and my trust." And so the human who had been underestimated by everyone became more than a victor of a challenge. He became a symbol of courage, intelligence, and heart, proving that even the smallest and most ordinary among us can achieve extraordinary things when guided by honesty,